Hi there, and welcome to this video lesson on completing the square. Now, completing the square is a method of finding the roots of a quadratic graph like that. If we were to be given this equation here, and we wanted to find out these roots down here, the way we'd go about doing that is we'd factorise this equation, we'd set it equal to 0, we'd have our x, and we'd find two numbers that times together to make positive 6 and add together to make positive 5. So we'd end up with positive 2 and positive 3. Then we'd solve this equation to find our roots, and our roots would be x equals minus 3 and x equals minus 2. That means that it would cross here at minus 3 and cross here at minus 2. But what happens if we were given an equation where we couldn't find any numbers that times together to make this number here and added together to make this number here? Well, that's where the method of completing the square comes in handy. So let's look at this left-hand example over here. So we can't find two numbers that times together to make 1 and add together to make 8. We can't do it. Okay, so we need to complete the square. And the first thing we're going to do to complete the square is we're going to put in a bracket like that. We're going to have a squared. And we'll want to find out what goes inside that bracket there. And the thing that goes inside that bracket is half this coefficient there. So whatever is in front of the x, we half it and we pop it in that bracket there. So let's do that. So half of positive 8 is positive 4. That's our first step. Now our second step is to take this number, square it, and then subtract it from what we've already got. So what have we already got? We've got this, x plus 4 squared. So we take this number, we square it, which is 16, and then we take it away from what we've already got. Now our third step is to take whatever we have on the end and pop it on. So we end up with x plus 4, all squared, take away 16, add 1. And now our last step is to simplify this part there. So x plus 4 all squared, minus 16 plus 1 is minus 15. And that's our first method of completing the square. So we'll go on how to solve for the roots a bit later on, but that is the method for completing the square. So let's go over that again. So first step, we write out our bracket and we find our coefficient. Our coefficient is half the coefficient in front of the x. Then what we do is we take the thing that's inside the bracket, so the positive 4 in this case, we square it, and then we subtract it away from the whole bracket. And then our next step is to bring whatever we have down, whatever number we have down, and then simplify, and that's completing the square. Okay? So pause the video here, copy out the working for that left-hand example, then have a go at this right-hand example and play the video once you're done. Okay, so let's go through this. So the first step, we have our bracket, we have it squared, and we want to find out what our coefficient is. Well, it's half that. So half of positive 10 is positive 5. We said our second step was to square this number and subtract it. So x plus 5 squared. 5 squared is 25, so we subtract 25. And we said our third step was to take this number down and pop it on the end. So we have x plus 5 all squared, subtract 25 plus 3. Then we said our last step was to simplify this. So x plus 5 all squared, minus 25 plus 3 is minus 22. And that's our final answer there. So if you got that, fantastic. Give yourself some ticks. Well done. Okay, let's have a look at the second question. So let's have a look at this question here on the left-hand side. Complete the square. Okay, so that's just what we're doing. And then solve the following. So that's to find those roots. So I would copy this one down as I'm doing it, just because it's going to be quite a long question. So first things first, let's complete the square. And we do that exactly the same method as we just did. So our first step is our bracket, we have it all squared, and then we want to find out what goes here, And we do that by halving this number. So half of minus 8 is minus 4. Now our second step is to square this number and subtract it. So x minus 4 squared. Minus 4 squared is 16. So subtract 16 gives us negative 16 there. And then we said our third step was to bring this number down. So we've got that. X minus 4 squared minus 16 minus 2. Now our fourth step is to simplify. So exactly the same as before. Minus 4 all squared. Minus 16 minus 2 gives us minus 18. Okay? But there is a key difference. And that is that it is equal to 0. So we can say that this is equal to 0. So let's pop that in. All of that is equal to 0. Okay, so we've completed the square. We've done the first part of it. Now we have to solve. And we can do this just like we usually solve equations. So we want to have x on its own. So my first step would be to get rid of this number here. So I'm going to plus 18 to both sides of the equation to get rid of that negative 18. That's going to give me x minus 4 squared equals 18. To get rid of this squared number up here, I'm going to square root both sides. And if I do, I end up with x minus 4 equals plus or minus root 18. That plus or minus is really important. And that's because, say if we square rooted 9, let's just do it down here. We square root 9, we can have plus 3 or minus 3. Because minus 3 squared gives us 9 and positive 3 squared gives us 9. So that plus or minus is really important. Okay, and now we just need to get rid of that negative 4. So let's add 4 to both sides to give us x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 18. Okay, fantastic. So what does that mean? That means we have two roots. We have the root where x equals 4 plus root 18, and the root where x equals 4 minus root 18. So if we were to draw a graph, and this graph is going to be a bit skew-whiff and dodgy, if we had that, we'd know our quadratic equation crossed here at 4 minus root 18 and crossed here at 4 plus root 18. So that's what that means. Don't need to really bother with drawing the graph for these, but just so you know how it relates to the actual graph. So those are your two answers there. 4 plus root 18 and 4 take away root 18. So if it's complete the square and solve, we complete the square, and then we make it equal to 0 if it's equal to 0 up here. And then we solve it by rearranging the formula to get x equals something. And remember, there's always there's going to be two roots, and a positive and a negative. Okay? So pause the video here, have a go at this left-hand example, and then play the video once you're done. Okay, fantastic. Let's go through this. So let's complete the square first. So x brackets all squared. What's this number here? Well, it's half minus 10. So it's minus 5. What's our next step? Our next step is to square this number and take it away. So x minus 5 all squared. Minus 5 squared gives us 25. Let's take that away. So take away 25. What's our third step? Our third step was to bring this number down. So we add on the 10 up there. Our fourth step was to simplify. Minus 25 plus 10 gives us minus 15. And we can see that it is equal to 0, therefore we need to equal this to 0. Perfect. Now it's equal to 0, we can solve. So, first things first, let's add 15 to both sides. Let's add 15. So that gives us x minus 5 all squared equals 15. Now let's square root both sides to give us x minus 5 equals root 15. Now we want to get rid of that negative 5, so I'm going to add 5 to both sides to give us x. Oh, and that's plus or minus. Before I forget, I almost made that mistake there. Plus or minus root 15. So let's add 5 to both sides. So x equals 5 plus or minus root 15. So that means that we have two roots. We have a root where x equals 5 plus root 15, and a root where x equals 5 minus root 15. And those are our two answers. So if you got that, fantastic. Give yourself some ticks. Well done. Very impressive. Very, very impressive. Okay, let's have a look at this third and final example. So complete the square and solve the following of this left hand. 2x squared plus 8x plus 2. Okay, so something different about this, and that's the fact that it has a 2 as a coefficient in front of it. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I want to get rid of that 2 because I like it x squared. I don't want anything in front of it. And the way I do that is I factorise 2 out of everything in that equation. And if I do that, what I'm doing is I'm taking 2 outside. I'm going to put it in a big bracket. So we have x squared. If we factorise 2 out of 8x, we end up with 4x. And if we factorise 2 out of positive 2, we end up with positive 1. I'm going to say all that equals to 0. Now, let's complete the square for this part inside the bracket. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the 2 and the big bracket outside, but I'm just going to complete the square for whatever's inside the bracket. So we have x squared equals 0. Keep it like that. What goes in here? Well, it's half this number here, so plus 2. Let's keep going with this. So x plus 2 all squared. We say that we subtract this number squared, so 2 squared is 4, so we subtract 4. And then we said that we take this number, don't we, and add it on. So minus 4 plus 1 equals 0. And our last step is to simplify. So minus 4 plus 1 gives us minus 3. Okay, fantastic. Let's just get rid of all this working out from earlier down there. Okay, fantastic. So now what we can do is we can expand this big square bracket. So if we do, we times 2 by everything inside that bracket. So we end up with 2x plus 2 all squared minus 6 equals 0. So now we've completed the square. What we can do is we can solve. So what I would do is I'd add 6 to both sides to give us 2x plus 2 all squared equals 6. Now, to get rid of this times by 2, we need to divide by 2. So divide both sides by 2 to give us x brackets plus 2 all squared equals 3. To get rid of the squared, we need to square root. So x plus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 3. We don't need these brackets here. Okay. And now we're going to subtract 2 from both sides to give us x equals minus 2 plus or minus the square root of 3. And what that means is that we have two roots, x equals minus 2 plus root 3, and x equals minus 2 subtract root 3. And those are our two answers. Okay, so that's how we work out that's how we solve the equation, complete the square, when we have a coefficient in front of our x. So we just factorise it out, complete the square of the inside brackets down here, and then we expand it, then we solve it. Okay, so have a go at this right hand example over here, and then play the video once you're done. Okay, fantastic. So hopefully you've had a go at this right hand example. Let's go through it together. So we want to get rid of this 3. Let's factorise 3 out of everything. So 3 big brackets x squared plus 4x plus 1 equals 0. Now let's complete the square for the thing inside the big bracket. Okay, so 3x squared. This number here is going to be half that, so half of positive 4 is positive 2. Let's do a couple of steps in one. What's positive 2 squared? Well, it's 4, so we subtract 4, and then we add on the 1. That equals 0. Let's simplify, let's tidy it up. So we have that, minus 4 plus 1 gives us minus 3, equals 0. Okay? So now what we can do is we can expand this bracket. So if we do, we end up with 3x plus 2 squared minus 9 equals 0. And now we can solve. So let's add 9 to both sides to give us 3 brackets x plus 2 squared equals 9. Let's divide both sides by 3 to give us x plus 2 all squared equals 3. Let's square root both sides to give us x plus 2 equals plus or minus root 3. And now let's subtract 2 from both sides to give us x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of root 3. Oh, sorry, the root 3 rather. So we now have two roots. We have a root where x equals minus 2 plus root 3, and a root where x equals minus 2 minus root 3. Ooh, like that. Fantastic. So if you've got those, give yourself some ticks. Well done. Well done. Okay? So what I've got down here, 3 checks and 1 extension for you to do. So pause the video here, have a go at those 3 checks, have a go at the extension, and then play the video once you're done. Okay, so let's go through these. So let's have a look at the check down here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of speed through these quite quickly. So let's complete the square for this one. So we have x squared, half of positive 2 is positive 1. Positive 1 all squared is 1, so we subtract 1, and then we put this number on the end, subtract 1, equals 0. So let's tidy that up a little bit, plus 1 squared minus 1 is minus 2, equals 0. Let's solve, so plus 2, x plus 1 all squared gives us 2. Let's square root, so x, we don't need that bracket, x plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 2. Let's subtract 1 from both sides. So x equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 2. So we have 2 roots. X equals minus 1 plus root 2. And x equals minus 1 minus root 2. If you got them, fantastic. Give yourself some ticks. Well done. Okay, let's have a look at the second example up here. So let's complete the square. So x squared, half of 14 is positive 7. Positive 7 squared is 49, so subtract that. Then we stick that number on the end, minus 4. X plus 7 squared, let's tidy this part up. So minus 49 minus 4 gives us minus 53 equals 0. Let's make that equal to 0. Now let's solve, so plus 53 to both sides. We end up with x plus 7 all squared equals 53. Let's square root both sides. So x plus 7 equals plus or minus the square root of 53. We don't need that bracket. Let's subtract 7 from both sides to give us x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 53. Okay? So that means we have 2 roots, one where x equals negative 7 plus root 53, and one where x equals negative 7 minus root 53. Okay, so if you've got those, fantastic. Give yourself some ticks. Well done. Okay, let's have a look at the third example down here. So we have a coefficient in front of this x, so we need to factorise that out before we do anything else. So 2 brackets x squared plus 8x minus 10 equals 0. Fantastic. Let's complete let's complete the square for the square brackets. So 2x squared, half of 8 is plus 4. 4 squared is 16, so subtract that. And then we add that one on the end, so take away 10 equals 0. Let's simplify. So x plus 4 squared, negative 16, negative 10 is negative 26 equals 0. Let's expand by timesing everything by 2 to give us 2x plus 4 all squared negative 52 equals 0. Now let's solve for x, so plus 52 plus 52. So 2 brackets x plus 4 squared equals 52. Divide by 2 gives us x plus 4 squared equals 26. Let's square root both sides to give us x plus 4 equals plus or minus the root 26. Subtract 4 to give us x equals negative 4 plus or minus square root of 26. So that of course means we have two roots. We have a root where x equals minus 4 plus root 26, and a root where x equals minus 4 minus root 26. So if you've got those two, fantastic. Give yourself some ticks. Well done. Well done. Okay, and last but not least, let's have a quick look at that example. Write x minus 7 all squared plus 11 in the form x squared plus bx plus c. Okay, that's kind of just doing the opposite of what we've been doing, so let's expand that. So let's take this down. X minus 7 all squared plus 11. So let's expand that bracket. So if we were x minus 7, okay, so x squared minus 7x plus 49. So if we were to rewrite that, we'd end up with x squared minus 7x plus 49, which would be x squared minus 14x plus 49, like that. But don't forget we've got the plus 11 on the end, so let's stick that on the end, plus 11. So let's kind of tidy this up a bit. We'd end up with x squared minus 14x plus 60. And that's your final answer. So B would equal minus 14, C would equal 60. So if you got that, fantastic. Give yourself some ticks. Well done. Okay, so if you can do those, you are in such a good position for completing the square when it comes up in an exam. So well done. Okay, hope you found this lesson helpful, and I shall see you in the next lesson. Take care. Bye.